guys, and welcome back to another video. I'm joined today with a special guest, which is Kaitlyn Louise Smith. Would you just like to give a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Kaitlyn Louise Smith. Pre-pandemic, I was in the Mean Girls national tour, playing Sonia Aquino and the Danny DeVito girl. And I have a long career of working as a dancer in musical theater, dancer, singer, actor in musical theater. Before Mean Girls, I was playing Tracy Turnblad in an inaugural production of Hairspray for Royal Caribbean. And I went to school at Indiana University in the States. And yeah, I have many a knowledge. I've been wanting to do this my whole life, and I'm so happy to be doing it right now. So
Great. So we'll just get started with the questions. So
great.
the first one is, how did you get involved in Mean Girls?
Yeah, so I auditioned for it in New York City, and it was a long audition process because the first audition I ever went to was for the lab production of it, and there was like 900 women there. It was an ECC call, aka an equity course call. So I was equity at the time, so I was able to get seen, but it was just so many women, so they had to sort of like really narrow it down based on type, and I didn't get through. So that was immediate like cut. And then, they were looking for people like after the lab for the regional tryout at the National Theater. And I sort of had already done really well in callbacks for the prom. And the prom creative team is very similar to the Mean Girls creative team. So they brought me in for an invited call, and it went really well. I was in the last group of people at the end of the day. I found out that they were looking for very specific things, so it wasn't my time. Um, but yeah, I mean, and then a year and a half later, I auditioned for the national tour. So it was definitely a long process that took a lot of um, patience and determination, but that's what it takes in this business.
Great. So this is just a question that I've just randomly come up with. So you said that you was in an all-girls production of Hairspray playing Tracy.
Yeah.
What
Um,
what was that
Sorry, go ahead.
what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it was so fun. I love playing Tracy Turnblad. She's such a beyond a big and beyond lady. She's just so fun to do. I have my qualms with the musical in and of itself. But I think, I've always wanted to play Tracy. I got to do it for a whole year. So it was so awesome to be able to do that for an entire year. And to really like live in her shoes for that whole year. I learned a lot about the character actually, and um, yeah, I mean it's an interesting show. The one thing that I will say is that getting to do Hairspray, I love Hairspray. I grew up with Hairspray. It's such a fun musical, but I'm slowly as I get older, I'm discovering that there are problems with musicals that are about people but are not written by those people. And I think Hairspray is a great example of that. Takes place in the 1960s in the U.S., which, if you don't know, it was a very complicated time and rough piece of our history because we were still very much dealing with segregation and civil rights. And so, not only does the piece try to tackle race, but it also tries to tackle like women and their body issues and what women should be and you know a teenager that's like confident in who she is and in her skin when other people see her as being large. Um, and I think I love the idea of the musical. The problem for me is that it's written by all white men. And for almost every production I've done of it, I've had a white director and a white male choreographer. So it's interesting. I'd love to see that story being told by someone of color or someone that has experienced the one oppression, and two that's telling the story of a young woman who's like discovering herself and finding her identity. And I just feel like the I'm excited for the shows where I feel like maybe the people that are writing them are a little bit more in touch with those people and their experiences, because I think that when they're not in touch or they don't know what it feels like and they don't have those experiences, they lose an element of understanding that can therefore make the piece come across as making fun of those things versus this is a comedy piece and we are all in the know of what this is about. Like I feel like that's when it sort of those fine lines and those fine details are really important in making a really successful piece of whether it's satire or whether it's something realistic or something dramatic.
Yeah, so like getting back to what you said, seeing someone play like a person of color, it's like one of them most important things at the moment, because obviously with the whole Black Lives Matter thing last year, so
Right.
diversity is just one of the most important things.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, it's so weird because I think Tracy is it's like a coveted role for girls that are bigger than what they would say is Broadway body, right? And unfortunately, we feel like we have to like label ourselves as like I'm this, I'm curvy, I'm this. And I just the problem with that role is that it's like the only one out there. And that's why people get so protective of it, because like I've been told like you're too skinny to be Tracy. And I understand why some women would feel that way, because especially if like they view me as being skinny because they may be bigger than me. But at the end of the day, I also have been ridiculed for my size, and I've literally experienced those things, you know, firsthand, especially in the dance community, because the narrative of the piece is that she's trying to get onto a dance show and she's short and stout or whatever word that they use in the show. um and so it's if we didn't have this like protection over this one role, if there were a ton of different roles that like anyone could like sort of like put themselves into, or maybe surprise, like what a great idea this would be if we cast people of all shapes and sizes and it wasn't limited to like their aesthetic and what they looked like.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe there wouldn't be this problem of like pointing the finger at someone that's on your team, right?
Yeah.
Um and and I think that's the biggest thing. I would love to be in musical theater and in theater the day whenever we're just writing interesting characters and like there's a curvy woman on stage and it has nothing to do with her storyline has nothing to do with the fact that she's curvy. Um and or that whatever it is, whether it's race, same thing. Like if there's a black man on stage and nothing in his plot has to do with the fact that he's black, or and even like love acceptance, like and the joy in that, like two women on stage that are in a relationship but they you don't there's no problems happening about the fact that they're in a lesbian relationship, like
Yeah.
there just are. And that's not the storyline. That's the time period that I'm like so excited for. Like I'm excited for the day when it's accepted and we can just like move on to um minimalizing people and making them not individuals and not the complex things that they are, but like being defined by the problems that they have or being defined by the way they look. I think that's more exciting anyway.
Yeah, 100%. So the next question is, what does Mean Girls mean to you?
Mm. Well, I grew up with the movie. I loved it. I watched it way too young. And it was always something that I felt in my heart of like I I had my own Regina George, at my school. There was something so universal, and that's why Mean Girls was so successful, right? Because they weren't expecting it to be a hit. Like they thought that Tina Fey thought it was going to be a flop. But there was something that hit so close to home. Whether you were a child or an adult, everyone knew of Regina George. And there is something very cathartic about the movie in and of itself. But I think what the musical does really well is embrace social media and really talk about that. And that is something that the movie in 2004 was not expecting. No one could have expected social media to be what it is today. Um, and I think the thing for me about Mean Girls is that I really feel like the musical speaks to that relationship between you and your peers. And I'm a grown woman. I am in my late 20s. Like I feel like I have a good grasp of who I am and my identity. And yet when I'm on social media, I still struggle with comparing myself to others and looking at them and being like, well, why they look so pretty? Like, why can't I look like that? Or it's like they're doing this, like I should be doing more of that. And the constant comparison of like, I want to be that and I'm not satisfied with who I am is something that I feel like not only resonates with people my age, but it resonates with a lot of teenagers, especially those that are trying to figure who they are and figure out like what they're made of. And I feel like social media can just, gosh, it can be, I can't even imagine what it would do to my self esteem as a kid. So, like, I feel like what Mean Girls does really well is remind people to not look at the surface level of individuals, whether it's through social media or whether it's through this, like, you know, facade that they have going on, and to really look inward and find real true friends that are there for you, and that we're all special in our own way, and that's good.
Yeah, like everyone's got like either a group of heathers or a group of plastics in their school. So it's just literally like one of them things.
Yeah, I mean, there will always be the popular group, and I'm actually reading a really interesting book right now called Popular. It's a psychology book, but it just talks about like good kinds of popular and bad kinds of popular, and how one can be defined by being friendly and being um you know outreaching and just like constantly giving towards others, and then one of it is status related. And again, we want to avoid the status involved popularity. That's popularity for status and status only. We want to be well liked because we're friendly, you know. So
Yeah, so another question that I've got for you is what is your favourite scene and song in Mean Girls?
I feel so bad because like I feel like it's the answer that I always go to, but it really is such a powerful moment. For me, it's Fearless. I love that part in the musical, not just for my character, but for the ensemble. It's such an ensemble feature that I think is so important. It also like is a moment that Katie, like we're all rooting for Katie, and there's something so exciting about that. It kicks my butt though. I mean, it's thank God it's at the end of Act One. I don't know what I do because we're all at the end of it, just like Kafui, like we're all done. Um, but I just love the number, and it feels so genuine and real. And I feel like no matter what, I can like deliver in that number and feel good about what I did. So it's a really, it makes me feel free whenever I get to do it.
Yeah, so another one is what even though you're usually on stage every night, does it ever get tiring or even boring when performing in the same show?
That's a really great question. And I think a lot of questions that performers don't think about because we're so used to doing like two show weekends of a show and then being done. And no one really talks about the longevity of maintaining your career and a production. So for me, everyone deals with it in different ways. Some people will goof around to keep it interesting. I'm not going to say who, but for me, it's the it's it's the love of what I do that fuels me. I've wanted to do this my whole life, and that passion takes over. No matter if I've been doing a show 100 times or 200 times, it underlies everything I do. Every time I go on stage, I'm grateful because I've been given this opportunity to do what I've loved to do my entire life. Um, and so for me, I really treat my job as a job, just like anyone has to go into work and deliver their best every day. Like I always go into a show thinking, like, this audience deserves the same exact show that I gave to that audience and that audience and that audience. And I make it my mission to deliver the best show possible from me. And that's my job. My job is to deliver an awesome show. So yes, of course, like that sounds really like technical because I'm like, oh, this is my job, but I am getting paid to do it. And I think so many people forget that like we've been doing it, because we love it. We've been doing it for free for so long. And then finally we get paid to do it and it's so worth it. Like, and that's why I take it so seriously. It's because I'm getting paid to do the thing that I love. And I was already very grateful for that. So I feel like COVID, it felt like one of those things where I was like, I didn't need this lesson. I knew how great I had it. But yeah, I mean, I really do love what I do, and that will make it interesting no matter if I've done the show 500 times or whatever. I love what I do.
Have you been in any other shows previous to Mean Girls?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of regional productions of things. But I think like Hairspray was my first like big contract, where I did it for a full like year and a half. And yeah, doing a role like that was certainly undertaking. It was a big role. Tracy's a big role. She's got a lot a lot going on. Um, but then before that I've done a lot of ensemble gigs. I've done a lot of dance ensemble gigs. I've done a lot of period shows, a lot of high schoolers that are dancing their hearts out. That's sort of my typecast. No, I mean, like, I've done Grease, I've done All Shook Up, I've done Shrek, I've done Adam's Family. I sort of live in that like period piece or comedic world. But yeah, I've really loved doing regional theater. I've just found honestly more success doing like bigger contracts. Mostly because I'm a little bit out of the box. Sometimes a lot of regional theaters want to sort of stick to what they know, and seeing me as a dancer can be a little bit jarring for some people. So yeah, it depends on what avenue you're going through.
Yeah. Have you ever done anything on Broadway?
I have not.
So
Goal
you yet to make your Broadway debut then?
yet to make my Broadway debut. Uh, love for it to happen sooner than later. Yeah, it's crazy. I've been so close. That's the hard part. That's the thing that people don't talk about. It's that like the amount of times that I was just like this close to like, you know, going in and like, nailing the other thing, and this is the other thing. I'm very specific. I a lot of my friends who are very talented are able to sort of they're really good people to cover either for Broadway shows or to do replacements for Broadway shows. And all of my huge successes have been for original work. And which is so cool. Like so many times I've been in for things where it's been all original and original roles and, you know, first time productions, but that also makes it 10 times harder to get into. Um, because they do have this full palette of people that they can create the show on. So it is really cool getting like, into these really cool shows where they're creating brand new characters. But at the same token, um, it's more competitive in many ways. So it's sort of part of being a little bit different. You know what I mean? Like there's advantages and disadvantages, and one of them is that I'm not someone that a casting director thinks like, "Ooh, who can just like fill this like little bit part that we need to fill." Like I'm not like someone that like they're like, "Oh, she's really versatile." You know, I like to think I'm versatile, but like at the same time, I look and I move and I function as a very individualistic human being. So I think sometimes it's you can't really sometimes just fit me in as a puzzle piece, you know. So it's positive and negatives, but I'm I'm definitely confident. I was feeling more confident before COVID, but I'm so confident. I'm so confident that I can do it, and it's a goal of mine.
Yeah, so one of my mates actually asked me to ask you this, so I'm just gonna ask it. Have you ever watched Glee, and if so, who's your favourite character?
Yes, I watched Glee. I was like one of the original people that watched Glee. I had to stop watching Glee because then I got my own sort of busy, and then I couldn't watch it anymore. But I was in that original group of people that would actually watch it on TV, and whatever night it was on. I can't remember. Um, who would I define myself as? It's so hard. Can I say the Jane Lynch character?
Sue Sylvester.
Miss Sylvester.
Everyone loves a bit of Sue Sylvester.
It's so funny. Like if you would have asked me that like 10 years ago, it would have been a very different answer. um like I definitely would have Rachel, what's her name in the show? Rachel
Rachel Berry.
Berry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have said totally Rachel Berry like 10 years ago. But I'm not that person anymore. And I mean like I'm not quite as cutthroat as she is, to be clear. Um I'm way more laid back. But I don't know. I That's so hard. That's a really hard question. Ah, gosh, Glee. I loved Glee. Uh it's so sad. It's just like it makes me so sad because Glee is something that like I loved so much and so dearly, and I feel like so many people have passed from that show, and it just feels like such a dark light has been put onto that show, and it just makes me sad because I took so much joy from it my younger years. Um yeah, that was a good reminder. Sorry. We can move on. This made me think.
So what do you class yourself as? A singer, actor, dancer, or performer? Or
This
all
is
of
a
them?
great this is a great question. It's so funny like when you sorry, I'm trying to say this in the right way. I really try to consider myself a triple threat. It comes across as being sort of braggy to be like, "Oh, I'm a triple threat." So I like to say instead of that, I like to say that I'm an actor because all of the things that I do, whether I'm dancing or singing or acting, is motivated by acting. And to me, what I value in a performer is a solid acting performance. Um, because that's what sticks out to me. That's what I prioritize. So I would say I'm an actor first because everything like my no matter what I'm doing, I approach it as the character. Um, and like I like if I'm gonna give an example. Hairspray. Tracy Turnblad. That I have seen many a production of Hairspray where the Tracy has done a ton of riffs, and because the actress can, and and just like takes advantage of the music in a very like hearty way, and I'm like more power to you. But as myself, as someone, my priorities is okay. I'm a 16-year-old girl. I'm not as exposed to some certain music of the time, so I wouldn't know how to riff. Um, and so I approach it very much in character. And sometimes even if you can do something, maybe you shouldn't, you know. Um, and I guess like that's what I mean. Like I'm not there to show off my vocals, right? I'm there to be believable. And whatever that means to be believable as a 16-year-old girl in Baltimore in the 1960s, that's what I have to do. So I always approach something not in like a what will make my dancing look best or what will make my voice sound the best. It's what would this character do? So I like to say that I'm an actor and then the rest of it's like meh. But if I had to pick, I'd say actor, dancer, singer, and then of course like I love to perform, so performer.
So, out of your character in Mean Girls, how do you make your character resonant with yourself?
That's a really great question. Well, it's so funny because taking on the Broadway musical to the national tour, obviously the individuals who had your role before sort of defined some things for you. And so sometimes it sort of feels like you get a costume, like a figurative costume, not a real costume. Like you get a costume that sort of doesn't fit to you. And that's why we have tailors, right? To like tailor the costume to you. I'm not talking about literally. Like we get our own costumes. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about figuratively of like getting on a role that someone else has put time and effort and created on themselves and then you have to take that and make it work for you. And Gianna is a great example of someone that really made Sonia her own. Like she did this whole thing. She became this like gay icon and it was amazing. It was so amazing and she did everything right. She like created this amazing centerpiece. It was awesome. She had the hair. It was awesome. So then like me also but here's the thing. Gianna's like can be super edgy. Like she has that look. She can be edgy. She played, she was Janice's understudy. She has that vein. And then like there's me who's like happy go lucky. Like I've played Tracy Turnblad. I'm like a lot more bubbly. And so like having to take that edginess and then add it to me was like it sort of felt like, oh, this doesn't fit. So and you find ways to make it fit. I was like, okay, so she's gonna be artistic. And so what I sort of created with Sonia was like example being like Gianna really made her a rebel. And one of the lines that I do have is the Danny DeVito girl is "You're not supposed to be in here," which is someone telling a boy that they're not supposed to be in the girls' bathroom. And so I was like, like to me that's like a rule follower. So she like wants to follow the rules. And so I made her this like sort of like this try hard who like doesn't really know who she is, who's like constantly trying to fit in and do whatever it takes. So she's like taking on so much that she becomes this mass of like, I'm trying to be cool, but I'm really not. And so that's what I ended up working with. And I think it works really well. And even in my dancing, I try to come across as like, I'm, I want, like, I'm trying, I'm like, I'm giving it all. And I think that like, I have almost this like, not anger, but like this like, what I try to add is like sort of like angst of like, not a like not defining who I am. And then in Fearless, I sort of let all of that anger and angst sort of dissolve into just joy. And it's such a beautiful moment, I think, that for mostly for me. No one in the audience probably notices it, but like I definitely am not as joyous until the end of Act 1. I try to really define her as someone that's like confused and angsty and like a teenager because like I think that was my experience as a teenager, and that's something I carry with me. So
Yeah, so I know loads of talented young performers. So how would you advise them to get started in their career?
yeah, everyone has their own pathway. I think that's really important to remind yourself. I remember when I was very young, I thought that it had to be this way, or that's it. Like that's the only way I'm gonna to make this industry, and that was to go to university or go to school in it, and move to New York and get the Broadway gig, and there you go. um, there's so many ways that you can find success in what we do. And you learn that once you start seeing who's in your cast and how they got there. And these people, like, the amount of people that I've worked with that went to business school and then like was like, I'm gonna go to a New York audition one day, and then they booked a Broadway gig. It happens. And I think what I think is most important is continuing to cultivate your craft and continuing to let that grow in a healthy way. So, whether that means going to a program to feel more confident in yourself, that's what I needed. I needed to go to a program because I needed to learn more. I was aching to find out more information from people that really knew that what they were talking about. And I felt like I did it in a very safe environment, aka I had a very small program that I worked a lot hands on with a lot of professors individually. And that was a very safe environment for me to build my confidence, so that when I did move to New York, I had a head on my shoulders and I was like ready for the rejection. Um, but not everyone is like that. Some people are ready to start auditioning right away. But I think the most important thing is that there's not just one path. As long as you're continuing to work and work hard on what you love to do, you can find success.
So, what is your dream role?
Oh, this is always a hard question because there's of course roles that I love. When I'm older, I'd love to play Adelaide in Guys and Dolls. Such a fun, amazing comedic character. She's just hilarious, and she's sort of one of those like triple threat roles that are very fun. But I and this is so cliche to say this, but like my dream role is the one that hasn't been written yet. Um, I'm really excited to see what kind of theater is produced um, after this pandemic. I'm excited to see more interesting characters come out into play. Um, yeah, I just think that there's so much more to art to be created and musicals that are going to be coming out that are just going to be outstanding, and not just roles for women, but roles for curvy women, roles for people of all shapes and sizes. And I'm just excited to see the renaissance, if you will, of musical theater.
So, what's been your favorite moment up to date from being on tour with Mean Girls?
Gosh, there's so many. And if I get a little sappy, I'm sorry, because it makes me it makes me so reminiscent, and uh, I have so many good memories. I can just name a few. Um, our first run through, the Broadway cast of Mean Girls came to our run through and watched the show, and it was such an amazing experience. Everyone was so supportive, and it was just such a family. And I'll never forget that day and the amount of love and support I felt. Um, I'll never forget our opening night for Mean Girls. That was just like hearing Danny just like belt her face off and everyone just going crazy backstage. It was so powerful. Um, just like random memories here and there, like the mishaps, the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, I think the thing that I miss most is the people.
Yeah.
Just like really solid cast. I think that that's like the one thing that made us such a successful show was that we bonded as a cast, and you can see that on stage. That kinetic energy and that relationship, and that happens with tour casts, right? Because we're not going home to our separate places. We all live together. So you just have that connection and that bond that other casts don't get. Um, but yeah, the people, man, the people. Good times.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Mean Girls has closed on Broadway. Will the tour still be resuming after all this madness?
Yeah. So right now we do have houses that are booking us, and we're continuing to reschedule. And right now we're supposed to be heading back in July. We'll see. That's it's one of those things where it's like we can't predict the future, but I mean, we're definitely there's a light at the end of the tunnel now that we're having vaccines, and it's just sort of crazy. It's sort of crazy. None of us expected this. I know I certainly didn't. So, but now that we're getting vaccines, hopefully we're able to do some sort of semblance of live theater. I just miss it so much. I really have struggled during this time because I do feel so strongly about the kind of theater I enjoy doing. Um, and I've discovered a lot about myself. I've discovered that, for me, there's a reason why I don't enjoy TV and film, and that's because I really don't get as much fulfillment recording something and then not, feeling that mutual energy of an audience member watching it, or I'm not getting that like adrenaline rush of doing it like live and in person, or the fact that it is live. There's some kind of element of like I'm also a perfectionist. So like me having to record something and send it to someone, I'm like, this is too much. I can't handle it. I'm always going to find a flaw. And that's why I love that live theater, because there's this beauty of it being a little raw and it being a little flawed, and it's good. So
Do you have any pre-show rituals?
yeah. I mean, I'm not. I think for me, it's all about mental rituals, and where I need to be mentally. I also, of course, stretch. Stretching is super important, especially as I get older. I used to not have to stretch as much, but as you get older, like the more amount of time you have to stretch. um, but yeah, I think for me, it's all about getting my head and my focus in the right place. I listen to a lot of music. Um, and then I think for me, staying healthy is super important. And the things that keep me healthy are hydrating, water, and sleep. And those are really all the things I need. I don't really have like a tip or a trick or I just, it's all about focus, mental focus, and for me, keeping my body healthy.
So I'm just going to ask you one more question, and that is, what does a regular day at the Mean Girls National Tour look like?
Well, I mean, it depends on who you are, but I can tell you my day. So my day is typically I wake up pretty early. I love to explore the different cities, so I will go to wherever we are, I'll go explore. Maybe I'll have breakfast. I mean, this is also pre-COVID, so I would have breakfast somewhere. And then maybe I find my favorite coffee shop, have a nice coffee. I love to explore. I love to walk, so I would just walk for hours and hours. My dog's gonna come attack me. I'm so sorry. This is not the normal anymore. But yeah. So hello. This is Joey. Joey, this is the world. But yeah. So um, where was I? Yeah, no. So I would love to explore museums, and it was just so fun. I love to travel, and for me I was really getting the best of both worlds because I was able to travel for a living and get paid to do it. So I would travel and I would explore museums and get to know the cities that we were in, and then I would give myself some nice like rest time, and then I would get my head in the game for the show. And my usually we have a half-hour call. I would always get there probably about an hour before the show. I You start getting very good at like your makeup and your wig, so that you're just like in and out. And I could do my makeup in like 10 minutes. It was so super quick. And I had probably the most complicated like makeup palette of all the female ensemble. So yeah, and then you just do pin curls, wig on, start show. 2.5 hours later, you're done. And then, some people go out, and I was always the person that was like, I need to sleep. I need to get my I need to get my 8 hours. And I really like to wake up early. I'm much more of a morning person. So I would, and then sometimes we would have rehearsals. I wasn't understudying, so like I didn't have the same rehearsals, but for the most part, uh people, if they had rehearsals, they were pretty limited. But yeah, so it was a dream, an absolute dream.
Yeah, so that comes to the end of them questions, but I've just got a few quick fire ones that I'm
Yeah.
going to ask every guest. So the first one is favorite musical,
Favorite musical, Into the Woods.
plays or musicals,
Plays or musicals? Musicals.
West End or Broadway,
Oh, you can't do that to me, but I'm going to say Broadway. Sorry, all the people from the West End. I would love, if I lived in London, I would be very happy to be on the West End, to be clear.
favorite theatre you have performed in,
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say the Fox Theater, although it's been a long time since I've been there. Sorry, I just got literally slapped in the face by my dog. Love it. Uh, so I grew. I know, isn't it entertaining? It's always exciting. Um, so growing up, I lived in St. Louis, Missouri, which is like right in the middle of the U.S. And there's this beautiful theater there called the Fox Theater, and that's where I grew up watching shows, and I love it there. And believe it or not, I performed there before, but right before the pandemic hit, we were scheduled to perform there for Mean Girls, and I was so heartbroken that we weren't able to perform there, but it's rescheduled there eventually. So I would love to perform Mean Girls there. But yeah, St. Louis.
the last one is one that has caused a massive riot.
Uh-oh.
Is cereal soup?
Is cereal soup? Well, I know there's the theory that everything could be a sandwich, a soup, or whatever it is, a sandwich or a soup. Like you could say that anything is a sandwich or a soup. So like in that train of thought, like that you could say anything. Oh wait, no, I know what it is. It's anything. So everything could be labeled as either a salad, a soup, or a sandwich. That anything ever could be one of those things.
Yeah.
So under that like logical thinking, yes, but like no. I mean, here's the thing. I really love soup. I'm a huge fan of soup. I love cold soup. I love warm soup. But the one thing that a soup needs to be for me is savory, I think. I haven't I haven't really had a sweet. I guess I've had like a watermelon. I don't know. Here's the thing. Cereal is not soup. It's breakfast.
So
But
that comes to the end.
everyone's gonna be like, cancel Kaitlyn, cancel. She's got it wrong. She got the answer wrong. If it makes you feel any better, all you have to do is you just have to rewind back to the moment where my dog slapped me in the face, and you can just replay it over and over again. This is awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
No worries. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, of course. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye.